Draft season is upon us. 231 days until next year's NFL draft. But who's counting? College football is back and better than ever, and that means we're breaking down the hottest prospects all season long. Is it the year of the quarterback? With Carson Beck and Shedeur Sanders leading the way, could we see another Mel Kiper and Field Yates have those answers and more? We're responding to your questions, your takes, and your draft dreams live. First Draft starts right now. Hello again, everybody, and welcome to this season's first edition of First Draft. You can listen to us every week through this college football season on Thursday afternoons, live on the ESPN YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts. The legends are here. Mel Kiper Jr., the man who invented the draft, and the great Field Yates. And I want to give very briefly the story of how this came to be. I'm Greeny, and what am I doing here? Well, I'll tell you what I'm doing here. This podcast has been an invaluable resource for me in the years that I've had the privilege of sitting with Mel and Lewis and Booger and everybody hosting the ESPN draft, the NFL draft, on ESPN. And I said, you guys, Field has tried to do double duty these last few years, hosting and being the insider and all of that. And I said, if you want me to come in and just ask you guys the questions, I'd be delighted to do it. And so that's what I'm here to do. You want to hear from Mel. You want to hear from Field. You want to ask your questions to them. And that's what we plan to do. And for the first time ever, we're doing it through the college football season. So we'll be with you weekly through the college football season and then twice a week when we get to the traditional draft season starting in January. So I'm thrilled to be here. I don't have any more to say. You want to hear from these guys. Mel, welcome back and welcome to this new edition of the First Draft podcast. 1 week of college football behind us. How we feeling?
2025 NFL draft begins right now, guys. It really begins right now. Somebody's going to be on the clock. I don't know who it is going to be right now. We're not going to speculate on that, but the draft begins right now because we've had some games been played. Players are now moving up. My first big board comes out Friday morning. Field's got his mock drafts out, his rankings boards out. We adjusted on the fly. Mine come out every Friday morning on ESPN.com. The top 10 positional rankings and the top 25 big board adjusted based on what we've seen that previous week. And what we saw this past week, guys, and Field was quarterback play. But maybe it'll slow out of the gate, but they got it together, and it's going to be a battle royal. And I got a player. I said it this morning on Get Up with Greeny and the guys. Travis Hunter, to me, is the best player. I mean, you think about what Champ Bailey was 25 years ago, guys. 25 years ago, Champ Bailey came out of Georgia, did everything for the Bulldogs, offense, defense, everything, right? And he was a great corner, Hall of Fame corner. Travis Hunter does everything at Colorado. He lights up the scoreboard. He prevents the scoreboard from being lit up as a lockdown corner. Field Yates, I've gone on record saying he's got to be on the offensive side of the ball in the NFL. You agree or disagree? I think offense, and to me, if there's anybody taking ahead of him, it's got to be one of the quarterbacks. That's it, because at a positional need value, there's no better player in this draft than Travis Hunter.
Well, Mel, I will say this. There are a couple of pass rushers who I think could be very much in the conversation for the first non-quarterback taken in the 2025 draft. However, they combined to play a total of 13 snaps in week one of the college football season. It's James Pierce Jr. from Tennessee, a true junior who played just 13 snaps. Tennessee took care of business. And Michael Williams from Georgia, who was limited after suffering an early ankle injury in their game, the dominant win over Clemson. So we didn't see really a whole lot of those two players. But I do think that Travis Hunter made that statement in week one that could carry all the way through this season. And it's going to be a fascinating debate. Who do you play, or where do you play Travis Hunter, Greeny, and Mel? Do you play him on both sides of the ball? Well, let's just look at history. There aren't a lot of guys that have played both sides of the football in the NFL. We're talking about basically Deion Sanders over the past 30 years. Even Champ Bailey had to declare a side. Charles Woodson declared a side. Those players are, it's often gravitating towards one side in the NFL. But as we know, right now, who's getting paid? This morning, from the time that we are having this conversation, Pat Surtain II became the highest paid cornerback in NFL history at $24 million per year, Greeny. As you know, Justin Jefferson makes $35 million per year. I get it. There's more than a decision that goes into the decision besides the money, but it's also a business, baby, right? And if I'm Travis Hunter, I see those numbers and I think to myself, I can be the first wide receiver taken and potentially a $40 or $42 million per year player just 3 years down the road from right now.
Well, but then let me reframe the question in that regard, because the highest paid player in any sport in America right now is Shohei Ohtani. And why is that? Because he does both. So I would ask you, Mel, is it even worth discussing the possibility that Travis Hunter could actually play both positions with at least some regularity on the pro level?
Early on, I think he could. He may well be asked to do that. But I do think as the skill set that he has, both at cornerback and that wide receiver, that receiving entity that he is, so dynamic. The catches he makes are so effortless. The competitive nature, how smart a football player he is. To me, you mentioned playing for Deion Sanders. It makes sense. Obviously, he goes to Jackson State instead of Florida State to be with Deion. Now he's at Colorado with Shedeur. And those quarterbacks, that's the one thing. How do the quarterbacks factor in here affects Travis Hunter? Does he get down to that 5th, 6th, 7th spot, which is where Champ Bailey came off the board? 7th pick in the draft for probably the best football player in that draft, right? Overall. Why? Because 3 quarterbacks, Tim Couch, Donovan McNabb, and Achilles Smith went 1, 2, 3. 4, 5 was Edgerrin James, running back, Ricky Williams, running back, right? Then I think it was Torrey Holt in that mix at 6, then Champ Bailey. So that's why you had the running backs. We're not going to see that anymore. That was 1999. That ain't happening now. But the quarterbacks, Carson Beck, Georgia, Shedeur Sanders, Colorado, Quinn Ewers from Texas, could be the 3 quarterbacks that get pushed up because they're quarterbacks, most important position in all sports. So I like Travis Hunter. He may be number 1 on my board come Friday, or 2, 3, 4. I haven't decided yet how I'm going to shake them down, but could he drop a little bit? He could if those quarterbacks and some of those pass rushers that Field mentioned get pushed up. And another name I'll throw in there, Abdul Carter from Penn State as well, as a pass rusher off the edge.
Yeah, he's playing pass rusher for the first time in a full-time capacity this season. He was a linebacker in prior years because they may have had a couple of decent pass rushers at Penn State, including one in Chop Robinson that got drafted in the first round this past year. My last word on Travis Hunter, Greeny, is just this. I bet the player will want to play both ways when he enters the NFL. He's a competitive guy, as Mel just mentioned. Whether that actually happens, I'm a little bit skeptical of just because of historical precedent. But what I think is so fascinating is I think the areas that make him a great receiver contribute to him being a great cornerback, and vice versa. His instincts and ball skills on defense are unparalleled in the country right now. You see the length show up often as a wide receiver, making contested catches down the sideline, knowing how to use every blade of grass available to him. There was a play this past weekend in Colorado's important win, by the way. It was a closer game than maybe some thought against North Dakota State, where he makes a play out of bounds that was it was not a catch, but like the effortlessness to Travis Hunter's game is part of the reason why he is such a rare specimen and a guy who could, as Mel said, be the number 1 non-quarterback taken.
Well, so let's keep talking about this because I find it fascinating. Our producer, the great Joey G, has put together a rundown, and here we are, the first topic of the first episode, and we're already ignoring it.
It's a podcast report.
I rather like this. Mel, in your opinion, I understand he has a full season left to be played, but we've seen a lot of him. Is he better on one side of the ball than the other? One question is, where does he want to play? Assuming that playing both ways is not possible and not realistic in the long run. Is he better, in your opinion, on one side of the ball versus the other?
I'll tell you what, splitting hairs there. That's why what I say to Field is it's possible he could start out as a young kid in the NFL playing on both sides of the ball because he is the great corner. I think when I watch him, the hand-eye coordination, how natural he is, how fluid he is. I think he's a receiving end. I think he's a guy who can change that scoreboard. They can say, well, he can prevent that scoreboard from changing if he's at the cornerback spot, but he's the number 1 receiver in this draft. T-Mac from Arizona was spectacular last week. He's unbelievable. Luther Burden at Missouri. You got the cornerback at Michigan, Will Johnson. So there are other players at receiver and corner that are going to be high picks. But for Travis Hunter, I think the offensive side of the ball is where he's at his best in the National Football League, the way the game's played today. I think cornerback, you'd love to have him be there because he could be that lockdown guy, but we know he's going to be a guy that's going to be a quarterback's best friend. I mean, look at you throw it up. He's not 6'4", but he's the same size as Champ Bailey was coming out of Georgia. Champ Bailey was a Hall of Fame corner. This kid could be a Hall of Fame receiver. He could be a Hall of Fame corner. That's why when you say who's the number 1 best overall football player, that's why we're not, just hyping this kid up. Travis Hunter is the real deal.
Yeah, he's special. I actually lean towards corner, Greeny, and it's possible we'll never know the answer to this because his decision might be influenced by things like the money, which I don't begrudge a player for following the much more profitable potential career path. Here's the reason why I say that is Travis Hunter is like wiry strong. He's not overpowering in terms of his like physical run after the catch nature. Much of his run after the catch damage that he does is being elusive and agile and running past players as opposed to running through them. As we know in today's NFL, physical corners are becoming kind of rare because you can't really be physical in the NFL. So I think the fluidity, the instincts, the ball skills, just the overall man-to-man confidence that Travis Hunter brings to the table might make me feel like he could be better suited as a corner, on top of the fact that while cornerbacks don't make as much money as wide receivers, I'd argue there are far fewer elite corners in the NFL than there are elite receivers. It kind of feels like we're entering this semi-golden era for wideouts, but it's maybe 55-45 or even a slimmer margin in terms of how many or like what percentage I believe Travis Hunter is a better defensive back as opposed to a wide receiver.
Can you imagine, guys, the battle between the offensive coordinator and the defensive coordinator? It's Ali Frazier. It's going to be a battle royal between the offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator for where Travis Hunter ends up playing on a team that drafts him in April.
Well, here's the answer. If it's a defensive head coach, he's playing defense. If it's an offensive head coach, he's playing offense.
I like that. And then there's also the possibility that the team is struggling on one or the other side of the ball and they wind up trying to switch him. He's going to be a fascinating player. He is the most interesting player to watch that doesn't play quarterback. But obviously quarterbacks are always at the center of most of the conversation, and we will get to them in just a moment. And then, as I promised, we're going to take your questions from social media today. Speaking of which, Mel, I know social media isn't necessarily your favorite thing. So it occurs to me that it is at least possible that you have not seen the video of what befell our friend Mr. Yates down in the Bahamas at the fantasy football getaway when he and a tackling dummy went head-to-head and the tackling dummy won. Have you seen the video of the play, Mel?
My daughter, Lauren, who is very technologically savvy and internet savvy and all the Instagrams and all the different stuff, sent me a picture and said, "You won't believe what happened to Field." And I said, I thought it was a fake. I thought Field was just pranking me. He says, just became a grandfather. Lauren became a mom for the first time. He's pranking us all, right? And Blakely's looking at it. She's a month old saying, "Is that Field? Was he really hurt, Grandpa?" And it was for real. Field is, and I'm looking at him now thinking he's faking this because he looks perfect. He always looks picture perfect, Mr. GQ there. I mean, are you really hurt, Field? Was it a significant injury? Is next week going to be a real surgery on that shoulder?
Yeah, there's a real surgery coming, unfortunately. It's been the weirdest thing. I did dislocate my shoulder and tear my labrum, but what's bizarre is that between the time that you suffer the injury and when you have surgery, which requires a bit of downtime because of swelling needing to reduce, you can start to feel pretty good, but you kind of fool yourself into thinking that you don't need surgery. Talk to me post-op. I'll probably be like this in a sling for a month. You guys can have as much fun as you possibly want, but I want to know this. And Greeny, you could throw a grade in here as well. Can I get a round grade for like approximately where I'd be drafted as a linebacker in the 2025 NFL draft after that bone-crunching hit?
What do you think, Mel? What are the upside? I mean, what's his upside? He seems to me like he's a player with a lot of upside.
I think he's got to be a little soft to not be able to withstand that. Now needing surgery. He's out for the year. He's lucky he's an analyst because if not, it would be on the shelf. I got to say, boy, just from a durability standpoint, I'd say undrafted free agent.
Come on, undrafted free agent.
That's not nice.
Hey,
no.
Okay, wait, say you can't make the club in the tub. Wasn't that the old cliche? You can't make the club in the tub. Availability is ability. All that stuff. I don't know, Field. I got to question that, pal. I don't know. You look like you're fine. So I don't know. Play through it. You even said surgery's an option. Surgery is just an option.
I know it is. It's going to end up being the option, though. I'm trying to be able to. First of all, when I see Mel in Green Bay, what I'm hoping, and I see Greeny a decent amount, they're in New York at the Seaport, very occasional trip up to Bristol. Mel, I don't see you other than at the draft. And I'm hoping to be able to give you the biggest bear hug alive when I see you there. And I don't want to go up to give that bear hug and then pop this shoulder out once again. So I'm going for the surgery specifically because of that reason.
And Mel touched on it. But Field, we would be remiss if we did not say that we have buried the lead because Mel Kiper Jr., since last, all of America has spoken to him. The man who invented the draft, the man who is on the Mount Rushmore of ESPN in its now 45-year history. Since last you heard from him, became a grandfather. So shame on us, Field, for not starting with that, Congratulations to you and the family, Mel.
Thanks, guys. Blakely's amazing. Blakely Grace is a month old today, actually. And, Kim's been with Lauren and Alex the whole time. Came back this weekend and she had her first trip down to the Eastern Shore, and she's doing great and couldn't be happier. Lauren's done a great job. Alex has been unbelievable. He's picked everything up. I look at the fragility of Field, say right now, right? He's fragile. I tell you, until Blakely gets about 5-6 months, I kind of back off a little bit. So I'm ready for the crawling stage, the walking stage. It's this fragile stage, not for me, but she's amazing. And it's, like I said, it's been unbelievable. You talk about a gift from God. That's exactly what it is. And for Lauren and Alex, I couldn't be happier. And Blakely Grace is going to be spoiled, and she's got us wrapped around every finger imaginable already.
It's wonderful. We're all so happy. I think I speak for America when I say we're happy for you and the family. Okay, let's get to some football here. Yes. Mel, you mentioned that Field has already released a far too early mock draft for the coming season. Say that again?
Far too early, even, one might say.
I mean, bordering on ridiculously too early. The NFL teams haven't played a game yet. But that's okay. It will not keep us. I've always thought that these really early mocks are much more interesting. Now I'm talking to you guys as one who has been consuming your work for the longest time. They're much more interesting relative to where you have the players lined up. I ignore which teams you have taking them, because at this point, no one knows where anyone is going to be drafted. Half the teams we think are going to be terrible aren't, and half the teams we think are going to be good are going to stink. But the players, generally speaking, are going to be the players. And at number one, you have a quarterback who looked really good against Clemson the other night. Let's talk first and foremost, Field, about Carson Beck.
Yeah, I think right now he is the leader in the clubhouse for the number one pick, Green. This is a player who started, obviously, last year, took over as a starter for Georgia, helped them to another excellent season, did not result in a championship, which, of course, has become the standard now down there in Athens. But Carson Beck has got a great build. This is a big, long-armed quarterback who can even add some more muscle to that frame. He is certainly, this is not quite Drake May, who I said often last year. Drake May was built in quarterback factory just in terms of overall stature, but excellent size here for Carson Beck. And he is just a brilliantly accurate passer. The way the football just flies off of his hands, very sudden thrower as well. Excellent anticipation thrower, throws with great touch. Obviously has a ton of talent around him and is a well-coached Georgia scheme. But I thought last year handled pressure really well. Good athlete, not a great elite athlete, but also not a statue. This past week, a little bit of a slower start out of the gate for that Georgia offense. But of course, they dominated the Clemson team to the point that they have been the talk, Clemson has, of the college football rhetoric in the days following it. I think Carson Beck, and again, there's so much football left to be played, but I think right now a deserving number one quarterback prospects if we're doing a list, this early on in the season. What do you think, Mel?
I think Shedeur Sanders has got to be right there. I have him closer. I think you do, Field. I'm a big fan of Shedeur Sanders. We talk about the toughness all day. That's real. To get hit as much as he did last year and hang in there, even this year he's going to get hit a lot, even though the offensive line has improved. Can't be any worse than it was. It was probably the worst offensive line I've ever seen last year. He's got some weapons to throw to. So for me, Shedeur, the accuracy you touched on with Carson Beck is there with Shedeur as well. He can move well enough within the pocket, and this is a guy can make any throw. So to me, Shedeur is there. Carson Beck was at 72% last year. He waited around. We all think he's 24 years of age. He's not. He's 21, won't be 22 until November. He was the 234th rated player coming out of high school. He was the 22nd highest rated quarterback coming out of high school. And look where he is now. Shedeur was the 15th highest rated quarterback. And guess what? Quinn Ewers, when he came out, was rated ahead of Caleb Williams, Drake May, and J.J. McCarthy.
Unreal.
And Quinn Ewers could make that push. He had that struggle. I remember the Rice game last year. First game out of blocks, guys. He's missed a couple throws. Then he goes to Alabama. He's lights out. 3 touchdown passes, 350 yards, leads him to an upset victory over Nick Saban and that defense, right? Then the next week against Wyoming, he's back home. He's at 52%. I'm thinking, what's going on here? Then from that point on, in every regular season game, he was 65% or higher. He's carried it over into this season. He's got some new guys. Lost his 4 top receivers, but he got some transfers in, right? The offensive line only lost 1 guy. He did lose his running back to the NFL, got hurt late last year in Brooks, and he lost his running back Baxter before the year started. But this kid's got talent. He can sling it. Yeah, like I said, rated that high coming out of high school for a reason. He went to Ohio State, then to Texas. Arch Manning's going to be the guy. Arch is going to have to wait because this is Quinn Ewers' team. Can Quinn Ewers get to that QB2, QB3? Could he be a QB1? I think it's still that 3-horse race. I think it's a little closer with Carson Beck and Shedeur and Quinn Ewers than maybe you think, Field. I get it on Carson Beck. He had some dinking and dunking in the first half, and they got it going. He lost McConkey. He lost Bowers. Now other guys have to step up. Dominic Lovett, I loved him at Missouri. I like him at Georgia as well. But I want to see how this plays out. I think right now there's 3 quarterbacks kind of vying in that mix to be the top quarterback in this draft come late April.
Yeah, and I'd add too is that I think that 3 came into the season kind of as the established likeliest candidates to be the number 1 pick or number 1 quarterback in this upcoming class, the 3 that Mel and I just mentioned. But I think what was maybe the story of the weekend in week 1, Green, at least from a draft perspective, was other quarterbacks coming out of the gates hot. There are a handful of them. And if I miss any, Mel, certainly fill in the gaps here. But Cam Ward, who made his Miami debut, spent the past couple of seasons at Washington State, they torched Florida. I mean, embarrassed Florida down in Gainesville as well. Talk about a player who can make things happen off schedule, a guy who can buy a little bit of time in the pocket or outside of the pocket and deliver lasers. That guy he looks like a closer in baseball coming in to throw 100-mile-per-hour gas in the 9th inning. He was terrific in his Miami debut, was Cam Ward. I think Jalen Milroe is a really fascinating player. He kind of had a slow start, as did the entire Alabama offense in their game before they ended up just gashing their way on the ground. But Milroe, such an intriguing combination of not just throwing capacity, but also maybe the most dynamic runner of all the quarterbacks in this year's draft class. So there might be a few more players that showed the depth of this quarterback class could be more intriguing. And I left some others out, not necessarily by design, but because I do know that it's so early that some of the players that flashed in just one game, I want to see it a little bit more before I start to push them up into that tier based off how I evaluated them coming into the season.
I think Jackson Dart at Ole Miss with the talent he has around him, particularly with the way Trey Harris is playing now, and Priest Corn, who came there from Memphis as the tight end. And then you look at a guy, you mentioned Cam Ward. I think Cam Ward right now is going to be, could he be this year's Jaden Daniels? Maybe. He was an incarnate Word, then he was at Washington State. Now he's going to light it up at Miami for a team that schedule-wise could be 11-1, 12-0. And then you think about Riley Leonard coming back from the injury, going to Notre Dame. He gutted it out for Notre Dame this past week, coming from Duke to Notre Dame, playing against his old coach. He got it done when he had to, as he always does. Former great high school basketball player. I think there's 8 quarters. Connor Wigman, I thought from A&M, would maybe jump in the mix. Did not play well, struggled, but didn't get a lot of help in that game. So I think there's 8 quarterbacks. I think we mentioned all 8 of them now. But I think Cam Ward, with the way he, and I don't want to say he's like 15 at Kansas City, because nobody's ever going to be that guy, but his arm angles, he's unorthodox with his delivery anyway, and then he's all over the place with his arm angles, and he's coming at you, and he's going to throw it from wherever because he has no fear. He will force some things. He didn't throw a lot of interceptions last year, though, but he had one this past week, but he has 4 touchdowns. He can move. He can beat you with his legs. Cam Ward may sneak up there. If he gets this team to a 12-0 regular season into playoffs with the kind of talent he has around him and that offensive line, Cam Ward can challenge as well and may be the guy that everybody was thinking 3rd, 4th, 5th round. It jumps way up that draft board.
Yeah, the last 2 names, by the way, I think in case we didn't get them in there, Miller Moss from USC and Garrett Nussmeier from LSU, of course, placed against each other on Sunday night. Players who both looked excellent, players who have bided their time at their respective universities. And it seems like maybe that development as a backup quarterback has led to at least a good start in their beginning stages of their starting quarterback tenure at LSU and USC.
A player that you didn't mention in that I'm interested in, and I think will get a lot of attention this year because of the team he plays for and the offense that he plays in, is Dillon Gabriel.
Yeah.
Pardon me, at Oregon. And I'm looking at his numbers here from this win over Idaho. And I mean, that's what it's worth. But 41 of 49, 380 passing yards. That is obviously a quarterback-friendly system. We saw what Bo Nix was able to do in it last year, as prolific a season as pretty much any quarterback has ever had. Is he Field a name that should be somewhere on the periphery of this conversation?
Yeah, I think so. I think periphery is the right way of describing it, Greeny. It's a fascinating stat line because it didn't feel like Oregon played that well against a gritty Idaho team. It was a 10-point final. This was not a dominant effort from Oregon by any stretch. I think the question with Dillon Gabriel probably be the stature and also the arm strength, which I don't want to make 2 traits the only things that define a player, but this is not the same frame as some of the other quarterbacks that we are talking about, and does not, I mentioned sort of that fastball nature to some of what Cam Ward can do. Not quite the same level of velocity from Dillon. Gabriel, of course, comes to Oregon after a year at Oklahoma. He's been a well-traveled quarterback in his college career, but yes, definitely a name that, as we're talking about sort of that next men up list, would be on it.
Yeah, guys, I watched a lot of that game. I thought Dillon Gabriel could win the Heisman Trophy, and the numbers look great. They put that O on the helmet, and maybe they thought to take it off. You know, that something wasn't right. That team, they just couldn't finish. They have the talent. The offensive line, there's two tackles had some trouble when he got pressured. He wasn't what he was when he didn't. To me, Tez Johnson and guy like Evan Stewart transferring in from A&M. You got the big tight end Ferguson. You got James at running back. There's pieces around him, and those numbers look good, but they didn't finish. Idaho gave them a heck of a battle. They got to 17-7. It became 17-14 late. Ended up 24-14. Now you get Genty and Boise State coming in. Probably the wrong time to catch Oregon if your boys is this week. Because if I'm Dan Lanning, I got a lot of teaching points. I got a lot of emotional, motivational points to say to this team, hey, we got to get it together. We are 50-point favorite, basically, and we're struggling with 3 minutes to go in that game to hold on and win against Idaho, the Vandals, who aren't even 1A anymore. So the bottom line is, we'll see this week what Oregon's made of. I thought Ohio State, Oregon, Georgia was 1, 2, 3. Now it's still Georgia. Ohio State's right in, and Oregon. Now people are saying, they were overrated. Well, this is why you don't overreact to week one. They don't preseason games. Week one wasn't their best. But for Dillon Gabriel, I think he's down the line. He looks to me, Field, and I don't know, 5'11", so he's like a Tua type. And that, if you want to say that, fine. All these comps are going to be out there. But to me, his accuracy definitely had that. He had it at UCF. He certainly has it at Oregon, but for the NFL, the lack of great arm strength, great college quarterback, no doubt. Is he a backup in the NFL? Is he a starter? That's going to be the debate. I'd probably have him as my 9th, 10th, 11th quarterback in this draft right now.
Yeah, not to try to name every quarterback in college football, but one last name that I'll say, and then I'll also bring up a backdrop to this conversation, is Drew Allar from Penn State, who arrived at Happy Valley with all the prestige and the accolades and the hype. Penn State's offense was a complete mess this past year. They ended up making a coordinator change, looked much, much more organized against West Virginia in a dominant win. Allar with a big season, maybe could rekindle some of those highlight reel capacity plays he had coming out of high school. But the interesting backdrop to all this is that as week one begins, I believe we have the most starting quarterbacks at 30 or under in any season in NFL history. The 24 out of the 32 starting quarterbacks are 30 or younger. There last year were 3 very obvious quarterback suitors at the very top of the draft. There will be a lot of obvious quarterback suitors once the draft rolls around. They're harder to pinpoint at this moment right now because you've got teams that are either partially committed or pretty darn well committed to a quarterback. But as we know, see the Arizona Cardinals, half a dozen years ago, when you draft Josh Rosen at 10th, and then a year later, you take Kyler Murray number 1 overall because you think Kyler's got a chance to be your franchise quarterback for 10 seasons. So it's a fascinating dynamic that there could be some decent depth. It's hard to identify who's going to need one.
I'll go right back real quick to Allar, Greeny. I got him 6'7", probably come Friday. I'm debating on that. Allar's with another coordinator. Colton Nicky's there. The offense is better. They lost their offensive tackles, the bookends. We know that, but they found some receivers emerge in that game. Warren, the tight end's a good player, and they got the 2 backs, Singleton and Allen. So they got some pieces. The O-line at Penn State's always coached up. They get it done. Another coordinator for Drew Allar who throws with anticipation. He looks the part. You could draw up a quarterback. He looks like that guy, but something's been missing to say, I'm going to move him up into that elite category. We'll see how the year plays out. He got off to a decent start, but right now he's at 6'7" in terms of the quarterback ranking right now.
Field, I want to take one more minute to focus on, I think, the most famous of the quarterbacks who aren't at the top of the 3. So the 3, to make sure that everyone understands and the organization of this conversation, because we've talked about so many quarterbacks here. Field, at least in your mind right now, Carson Beck is the first quarterback in this class. Shedeur Sanders is second. Quinn Ewers is third. And I think we all generally expect that as the season goes along, those 3 will jockey for position, and we'll see how they play. And then a lot of these other names factor in. By far the best known of the other guys is Jalen Milroe at Alabama. He had the unbelievable touchdown pass at the end of the game, last year against Auburn and everything else. And they go to the playoff, the Michigan game, and all of that. He's a unique player. I mean, they win a big game. Again, they played, what did they play? Western Kentucky. He threw 9 passes. What I see that you have a piece on ESPN Plus in which you're projecting his ability to jump up into the first round. And I think a lot of people have watched him and said, does he throw the ball at an NFL level? There isn't any question about the way he runs, but does he throw the ball at the pro level? Let's talk about Jalen Milroe.
Yeah, I don't think he did in the beginning of this past week's game, Green. You mentioned 9 total attempts, so it's not a massive sample size, but throw a little swing pass, one of the opening passes he throws at the game, and that's got to be a pass, and it's right in the runner's stride to allow that player to pick up yards after catch, and it just wasn't. Is he an accurate quarterback right now? Not at the level that he needs to be to soar into that first round, but I believe this is that we have seen this trend of quarterbacks who were not quite, they were less than the sum of their parts when the season begins. And they eventually rose through the ranks because of putting together a solid final college football season. And it's specifically these quarterbacks that have this unique athletic upside. Jalen Milroe has some pistons in his legs. I mean, the guy absolutely accelerates like a wide receiver in the open field. He hit nearly 20 miles per hour on the GPS speed this past weekend against Western Kentucky. And I believe this too, and this is a big part of the calculation. Kalen DeBoer, he has gone to a variety of different places, from now at the very top of the college football world, from Washington to Alabama. This is a guy who's coached at much lower levels as well. Everywhere Kalen DeBoer has gone, he has developed quarterbacks at an extremely high level. It would not surprise me if at the end of this season, we're talking about Jalen Milroe in the Heisman mix and also as one of the most improved quarterbacks in the entire draft class.
Yeah, got a quarterback here with the Baltimore Ravens who may have a couple bad series, and boom, it's a touchdown. Either he's running or he's throwing it. And that's Lamar Jackson. It was a 32nd pick in the draft. Ozzie Newsome was last move he made, traded back in and took Lamar Jackson. Everybody else didn't think he was going to be an NFL quarterback or position change, whatever. Jalen Milroe will have a series or 2 or 3 or a quarter that doesn't look good, doesn't look pretty. And all of a sudden, boom, there he goes. You start to get your guard down a little bit and boom, he's going to hit you because he's ultra competitive. You doubt him, man. He wants to prove you wrong. What's Lamar? Doubt him and he wants to prove you wrong, right? This is all about Jalen Milroe. And I'm with you. I think he is a Heisman candidate. No question about that. He's a winner. What he did last year was spectacular. He proved the doubters and skeptics completely wrong. Who didn't think he was going to be an effective college quarterback. He wasn't just effective. He was an outstanding college quarterback. And does he have NFL potential? Sure he does. So he's in that next grouping with Cam Ward to see who's going to emerge and maybe push up there into that 4th spot, maybe even a little higher than that.
Yeah, I had Milroe quarterback 4 to begin. So that's where I stand going into the season. And I don't know that week 1 dissuaded me or persuaded me any more than what I thought about Milroe coming into the game.
The only thing I'll add, I'm not an analyst. You guys are a draft analyst, but I did have Jalen Milroe in my studio one day this summer. Yeah. And I'm saying to spend 10 minutes with that kid is to love him. I am rooting as hard for Jalen Milroe as I am rooting for anybody in college, and that matters. All of the charisma, the charm, the intelligence, all of that stuff that you are looking for in a quarterback, he displays in person in droves, Field.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd be surprised. What was your sense on his size? Because I think he's listed as like only 6'1" on the Alabama website, might be 6'2". I would have thought, just based off how physical of a runner he is, he was bigger than that. Did he feel like, and you spent time around athletes for a long time and probably spent plenty of time around quarterbacks, did he feel like a physically imposing person?
Yes, he looked thicker to me than I expected. Like he looks so thin on the field. He looks much thicker. I'm just going to make a comparison. Like he looks much bigger than Jaden Daniels looks to me in person. Yeah. Jaden Daniels, we talked so much about his slight frame. Milroe height, I don't remember thinking to myself,
not Josh Allen, but
yeah. Oh, no. He's not Josh Allen, but I mean, who's Josh Allen?
I guess just Josh himself.
Allen. Yeah, Josh Allen is Josh Allen. And just ask Mel, he'll tell you. Mel, Lewis and I had this conversation on Get Up recently. We were talking about Josh Allen, and I made the remark that in any conversation you ever have with Mel Kiper about the draft, he will tell you that he was right on Josh Allen and everybody else was wrong. So that's your guy.
I will say this, Greeny. I've become the defender of. I'm the defense attorney for quarterbacks because they get unfairly criticized. And I think Brandon Beane said this about Josh, that there were a lot of haters, and haters want to keep hating. So they want to be proven right. Now, I've made this point today, though, in a couple of different shows I was doing. I said, I should just hate every quarterback that's going in the top 20. Because if you hate them all, you could say nothing's really good enough. I'm still right, because Josh Allen still has people thinking in their right saying he's overrated. And Joe Burrow, well, he gets hurt. He can't stay healthy. Joe Burrow, durability. Did he go to a Super Bowl? Doesn't matter. Still, so people, only one they can't say anything is about Patrick Mahomes. Give it up. Yeah. If you thought it was just a system quarterback coming out of Texas Tech, you're an idiot. You're wrong. You got to shut up. But for everybody else, you could pretty much say that went in the top group. And I think I was right because of this. He didn't stay healthy. This one here, Josh Allen hadn't done this, hadn't been to a Super Bowl. So again, I think if you say negative stuff and you're critical of quarterbacks, you can always feel you can pound your chest for a longer time period than being higher on guys. So for guys like Will Levis, Josh Allen, list goes on and on, defense attorney, because they're unfairly criticized and they want to, and people just want to just always give. You can even watch different things when you like somebody. Well, if he misses a throw, we're going to overlook that. We'll be talking about something else. During pro days, missing a throw. Well, we'll talk about something else, somebody else. If this guy missed a throw, you see, that's evidence of what we saw. It's always that way. If you don't like a guy, you want to find reasons to continue for everybody to see that you were right. So again, I should, like I said, I feel like I went to law school to a certain extent because in the NFL and with the draft, I have to defend these quarterbacks. Seems like every year.
All right. So I sidetracked us on that one, Joey. So let me bring us back onto the topic of the day. So there are the quarterbacks.
Josh Allen got us off course here, Greeny.
Yeah. Blame Josh.
Listen, I've said it before on TV. Right now, if you gave me my choice of any quarterback in the NFL, like everyone else, I would take Mahomes first. I would take Allen second myself. I think he's the second best guy, but that's a whole other, but that'll be for the next podcast we do. That when we rank the pro players, we'll do that podcast. In the meantime, this one's about the college players. So let's talk about a couple of the highest profile and best players who are not quarterbacks. We already spent some time on Travis Hunter. We love him, and there's not much more than that to be said about it, or not much more than we've already said. He's a fascinating player and will be fun to watch all year long. Their game against Nebraska this week is one of the most interesting ones on the schedule. Two other players I want to talk about. Field, that in my role as the host of the draft on draft night, you guys need to know the 40 time. You need to know, what he did in a game against high caliber opposition. I need to know how to pronounce his name. That's my most important. So please say the first name of the receiver they call T-Mac from Arizona, who had 10 catches for 304 yards and 4 touchdowns against New Mexico.
Yeah, Tetairoa McMillan is T-Mac. And now that we've said it once, Greeny, if based off what I've heard, I think he'd be cool if this referring to him as just T-Mac going forward. But Tetairoa McMillan, who talk about an opening week statement. Whatever the listed height is, I think he's taller. He looks like he's about 6'10". He is 6'5", 210 pounds. And what I would say about him is so unique is that you think 6'5", 210 pounds, you probably think this is a guy who's about power, right? This guy's just going to overwhelm you. This might be like Mike Evans, who's just such a great end zone target because you throw the football up to him and then 50-50 balls, more like 80 in the favor of Mike Evans and 20 in the favor of whoever's trying to cover Mike Evans. Tetairoa McMillan is an absolutely incredible route runner. The instincts are terrific. The way that he sets up defensive backs, he can deceive you because he has these long strides where he may not look like he is pushing the gas pedal all the way down to the floor. And the next thing you know, he's generated all this separation because he's just so darn long that one step for T-Mac is like enough for a quarterback to feel like he has thrown the football into the ocean. And what's so unique, though, about him as a receiver when the ball is thrown in his direction is he makes these catches where it looks like he has vice grips for hands, and yet it seems so buttery smooth. Like you might throw the football a little bit outside of his frame and you might as well be putting it on the numbers. His capacity to catch everything that is within arm's length and a little bit more is just so, so great. He was terrific after the catch. His first touchdown against New Mexico was when a defender just slipped, but really good after the catch as well. I believe he's the best wide receiver in the draft. So Mel and I are going to have an interesting debate between him and Travis Hunter. It may not be this past year's draft class in terms of wideouts, Greeny, but T-Mac is an absolute stud, and to be that big and that fluid is very uncommon to find.
That Jed Fish really found a quarterback in Noah Fafita, really saved their year last year. Arizona was, right in there, but they were losing some games, lost in overtime to Mississippi State and lost a tough game to USC and Caleb in overtime. And then Noah Fafita stepped in. Remember, Jalen Milroe had been the quarterback coming from Washington State. And when Noah Fafita stepped in, get the ball to T-Mac. And Jonah Coleman was the great running back. He's now at Washington with Jed Fish up there with Huskies. A heck of a player, will be in the National Football League in the not too distant future. So for T-Mac's Luther Burden III from Missouri. Don't forget about him. Really good player with Brady Cook. Their schedule very favorable with Missouri this year. And certainly a guy like Travis Hunter, who I think is the best receiver. I would put him ahead of T-Mac if you want to put him in a wide receiver spot, but T-Mac would be right in there with Luther Burden III. Brew McCoy, great to see him back coming off the injury at Tennessee. That got the job done this past week as well. So I want to see Evan Stewart, how he emerges at Oregon. A little quiet this past week. Tej Johnson had the bigger afternoon, but certainly Stewart could be in that mix as well. But I'm with you. T-Mac's a top 10 to 15 pick. I think certainly Burden III is in that mix as well. Colston Loveland is the top tight end who does everything. He will be this year's top 15 tight end entity and pass catching entity from that spot like Brock Bowers was this past year. So it's going to be a lot of those guys this year in the mix at the top part. But the defining part of this draft, guys, 8 of the top 10, 7 of the top 10, I think defensive players overall. And Travis Hunter now, if I want to put him on offense, maybe 6 to 7 out of 11. But I think defense, some of those pass rushers you mentioned, Field, certainly Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant, 2 great defensive tackles at Michigan. They play Texas at the Big House, high noon kickoff. That's the game of the week. You got Quinn Ewers. Inside pressure bothers quarterbacks as much as anything, more than anything. You got Grant and Graham. You got Josiah Stewart coming off the edge, Moore coming off the edge on the other side. A lockdown corner in Will Johnson, who's going to be a top 5 pick, had a pick 6 last week. This is a great defense. Offense is struggling at Michigan for obvious reasons. They lost a ton of talent, right? But this defense is big time. Barham, the transfer from Maryland's a really good inside linebacker. So to me, how does Ewers, they're 7.5-point favorite at the Big House, high noon kickoff. How does he get it done against this defense? It's going to be fun to watch, and this will be one of those moments for Quinn Ewers. If you're going to be a top quarterback in this draft, QB1, QB2, you got to get it done in this environment. You got the talent around you. You got 4 or 5 starters back. Kelvin Banks Jr. is going to be a top 10 pick, that left tackle spot. You got the talent around you. Let's see how he handles it.
Let's get to a couple of other things here because we're running short on time. And there are a few new elements to this podcast that we're excited to bring. And one of them is that we'll be taking your questions from Twitter X. So you can post your questions for Mel and for Field and just use the hashtag #FirstDraft. And Mel, you touched on these players a little bit a moment ago, but Veronica Townsend wants a quick thought from you guys on Luther Burden and Brady Cook from Mizzou. Mel?
Yeah, I think this is a team that's going to have a chance to win 9, 10 games. Some think 11 or 12 games. Over under in Vegas, by the way, team total was 9.5. Do you think it's a 10-2 team? Schedule looks really favorable, but Missouri lost a lot of talent to the National Football League. Brady Cook, to me, is down the line just a bit. Really good college quarterback. Luther Burden III, after the catch, what he can do. He's a dynamic player. He was one of the best, if not the best player coming out of high school into college football. He's been really good at Missouri, but they lost a lot of guys. Schrader was a key guy at running back, right? The offensive line with Foster, defensively with Robinson, the corners, they lost a lot. They really did, even at linebacker with Hopper. So a lot of talent left that team, but Cook is a great starting point. The quarterback, the veteran, who I think could be a backup in the NFL. And Burden is going to be a high-profile #1 receiver who could go top 10, top 12 overall come late April.
Yeah, I would agree with that on Burden. Just such an explosive, powerful player with the football in his hands.
Good luck tackling him.
Yeah, he really is. This is a throwback, and he's more explosive than this player I think ever was in a straight line. But I remember early in his career, Jarvis Landry ran angry out of the slot when he had the football in his hands during his early Dolphins and Browns days. And that was something that, again, I think Burden is a superior athlete to Jarvis Landry, but just in terms of the tenacity they played with the football in their hands, which you're going to see a ton of targets for Luther Burden once again this season. Hard guy to bring down. Brady Cook reminds me, not trying to get super specific in terms of the comparisons, but like a player we saw last year with Michael Pratt, in the sense that the draft range is going to be super subjective, right? Like, I think they have the qualities and the traits of a backup #2 or #3 quarterback in the NFL. Sometimes we see guys like that rise all the way up to the 4th or 5th round because a team falls in love, like a Sean Clifford a couple of years ago to Green Bay in the 5th round. Some guy like Michael Pratt goes to, incidentally, the Green Bay Packers late in the 7th round and then gets waived at the end of training camp.
One more quickly here. This is from Nick Kress, and you touched on this name briefly, but Field, he wants to know, what round is Jackson Dart going to go in this coming year's draft?
Ooh, man, Greeny. And I've already heard some pushback from the Ole Miss faithful here. I think Jackson Dart was incredible against Furman, but it was a 76-0 game. So I'm not taking too much from what they did. It's a fun offense to watch. I tell you what, they scheme it up right down there. It's, of course, Lane Kiffin, the head coach, Charlie Weis Jr., a name, of course, that probably rings a bell as the offensive coordinator, one of the bright young minds in all of college football. And they've got a ton of talent that Mel alluded to. Jackson, accurate quarterback, good athlete, nimble. My big question, and Mel, I'd be curious if you feel the same way or not, is what's the arm strength? He is a little bit more of a shot putter as opposed to a laser thrower, is Jackson Dart. I thought the arm strength showed up a little bit more last year in some of those big games. Can you jam the football into tight windows when you've got gotta have it situations where the coverage allows only for one specific throw? That, to me, will be what determines how high Jackson Dart goes. To me, he feels more like a second or third round guy right now, especially with the other quarterbacks, I think maybe having more upside to go higher, like a Cam Ward or a Jalen Milroe.
Yeah, Carson Beck's got a game September 28th at Alabama, October 19th at Texas, and November 9th at Oxford at Vaught Hemingway Stadium down at Ole Miss. Yeah. You'll see Jackson Dart and Carson Beck, and he has the weapons. Like I say, Prieskorn was a heck of an addition coming over from Memphis. Is a guy, big guy, tight end, can catch the ball down the field, can stretch it deep middle. Harris coming over as a transfer as well. They got guys that can get it done on both sides. Got some transfers on defense getting it done already. The cornerback Amos, the linebacker Paul. So this is a team, and no one at defensive tackle. So and the pass rusher from Florida. So Lane Kiffin got it done in the portal, and he's recruited. So he's got talent, but certainly for Jackson Dart, he can move. And guess what, Field? He's heard those questions about his arm strength. He hears that. He's a competitor. He was at USC. When he came out and he went to USC, he was considered an elite quarterback. He was rated ahead of some of these other guys that are in the NFL right now, okay? So he had a high grade by the guys that grade these kids coming out of high school for college. Jackson Dart did. I have him right now as the 8th or 9th quarterback. It'll be up Friday on ESPN.com. All you Ole Miss fans are going to be either 8 or 9 in the top 10 positional rankings at the quarterback position.
Hey, Mel, good luck. They're going to be mad.
One more thing before we finish, and this is going to make Mel mad. But the one thing I said when we had our one production meeting, our one conversation, was I love trivia. Anyone who knows any of my shows, on Get Up, we do trivia. On the radio show, we do trivia. I love trivia. To which Mel immediately said he hates trivia. So let's do one trivia question. We had Joe put together a trivia question for us. Let's play it out once. Let's see how we feel, and then we'll decide whether or not trivia is going to be a regular part of the weekly presentation here on First Draft. Mel, can we get you that far? Give it one try and see how we do.
I'm just here to observe. I'm not participating.
unless you know the answer, and then you should jump in.
I will not even answer that. Okay, I have to be consistent all the way through. Hey, trivia is short for trivial. My father always said, "Look it up. Look it up." Okay?
Look it up. Oh, that's so good. The original Mel Kiper had strong stance.
Yeah.
What's the question?
Mel, it's an honor to share the screen with you guys. I'm not going to lie. You're probably not going to feel the same way if I stump you. All right? This is what I got.
Yeah, stumping me, Joe G. Yeah.
Okay, we'll see. CeeDee Lamb has the most receptions of any Cowboy in their first 4 seasons in franchise history. Who are the 3 players below Lamb on that list?
Oh, man.
Care less.
Are you ready? The timer starts now.
Listen to Mel.
Hey, by the way, I had a nickname for CD when he came out. It was CDYAC, by the way. CDYAC.
That's right, because he was so good.
After the catch.
Yep.
Okay, I love trivia, so we got to jump in here. Okay, so I mean, legendary
I've got 2 ideas. I've got 2 names. The first one is the playmaker Michael Irvin.
Okay.
A throwback that is before my time, but because he was recently inducted into the Hall of Fame and had one of the great Pro Football Hall of Fame induction speeches, Drew Pearson.
Yeah.
Those are my 2 guesses that I'm willing to wager.
How about Dez Bryant?
Talk about one that the one I should have known, right? Those would be the 3 guesses.
So we're looking for how many guys, Joe?
3
or 4?
3.
3. So wait. So I mean, they've had a lot of other good receivers over the course of time. If we're going to go all the way back to a guy like Bob Hayes, but I mean, there was so much less passing in the NFL at that point. Fair. So I'm going to guess that there wasn't as prolific when he would have come into the league in the 60s. So let's do that. Let's go with, in no particular order, Field. Let's go with Drew Pearson,
Dez Bryant,
and
Michael Irvin.
and Michael Irvin. That's our guest, Joey G. How'd we do?
Mel, thoughts? Agree, disagree, or you're just
so
out
many
and tired?
guys. I mean, Harper was there when he was there. I mean, Donnelly, there was a lot of guys. Those three were really good. I have no idea. I would say you're probably 2 out of 3 or all 3 are correct. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, like I said, don't know.
I love how
of the
much Mel
three.
hates it.
Yeah, he's out.
One.
He's all out.
One of the
is
3 is right?
correct. Are you ready? CeeDee Lamb, in his first 4 seasons, has 395 receptions.
Oh.
The next highest, Dez Bryant at 293.
Wow.
Below him is Amari Cooper at 292.
Ooh.
And below him is Jason Witten at 252. You went 1, 4, 3.
Jason
Nowhere
Witten.
to go but up.
Hadn't thought of a tight end and should have said Billy Joe Dupree. All right, listen, it is a thrill and a treat to be with you guys, Field and Mel. Thank
Welcome
you for
aboard,
letting
Greeny.
me be a part of this. Again, we'll be with you every week. These podcasts will drop every Thursday through the entire season. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast and be with us every Thursday through the football season for all your NFL draft analysis. And again, send those questions on Twitter X. Use the hashtag #FirstDraft. And that's all the time we have. For Mel and for Field, I am Greeny. Thank you so much for being with us, and we'll see you next week.
They were to shove that trivia.